Welcome everyone to another month of Psychosomatic Conversations with Sean, Christy, and myself. We are this month talking about emotional stress and physical disturbances. And more significantly, we've been talking about this topic really over several months in the last series as well with the nervous system. But we're also taking a look at internal pressure, because internal pressure is one of the areas where emotional psychosomatic suppression starts to occur. And it is the root cause of many physical ailments, distress within the body. And yet, every single person experiences internal stress differently. So, depending on the family of origin, how they've perceived their childhood, which can be quite different. There can be almost like predisposed pathways that go through the ancestral lineage that you might respond in a particular way because that is the inherent pattern within your family. You can have two siblings that have exactly the same experience in life, and yet they're very different in terms of how they respond and how they hold on to that energy. And energy, like electricity, it likes to flow, it likes to move. So when we have energy that is stopped in its tracks, then we've got suppression, and that creates the environment for ill health. So we were having a conversation earlier in regard to what we're going to be discussing today, and we decided we would go back to the base, and we're going to be talking about poo. So all things relating to how you may experience going to the bathroom, from constipation to diarrhea to we're going to talk about hemorrhoids as well. So all things in regard to this, and of course, it's a topic that not everybody discusses on a daily basis. So we're hoping that it brings a new awareness to the conversation and maybe one that starts conversations as well within your friends. Like because it's something that's not discussed, it can sometimes have that aspect of inappropriateness, and yet it's a bodily function that is absolutely vital for survival. So, on the topic of poo, Christy.
Love it. One of my favorite subjects in that it's very important.
Yes.
It's very important as human beings to, I think, be aware of how we move through food through our bodies, how we move emotions through our bodies, because they go hand in hand. And it's so vital to our emotional health. And I also believe our mental health, because there's been many studies done that I've read about with, I was telling Linda today, they did a study in an Alzheimer's unit and they cleaned out the bowels of the people that were in there and how much better they did. Their brains seemed to function better at a higher level, and how important it is for overall health to have a clean bowel and be able to digest what is happening, what we eat, and it directly affects our brain. And everything is connected. We're not separate from anything. And that's really why we're having this conversation, is to bring awareness, because I believe when we have awareness to the patterns that happen to us physically, let alone emotionally, that helps us begin to heal, be curious, maybe stop a pattern that isn't pleasant, and ask different questions and maybe get different resources that you haven't thought about before. So to me, I love this subject. So it's kind of a funny thing, but how important is it to know about your digestion and to have an awareness around bowel movements and why it matters to understand them? So yeah, bring it
And
on.
Chrissy, you mentioned we were talking before, because we really want to bring in to the awareness within everyone who's listening to us, how we also work as psychosomatic therapists. And why, when we get you to fill out a form, why it's important to actually have an understanding to some of the health related conditions. Because as soon as we see that there is a problem in this area, it starts to direct our attention to be able to ask more specific styles of questions. And we're talking about patterns that can occur. And the patterns aren't actually saying this is what is happening for you. It's a line of communication that allows us to more accurately go into pinpointing some of the underlying emotional challenges. So, Christy, I'm going to come back with the story that you mentioned earlier, but before we do that, we'll just introduce Sean again.
Hi, everyone. Yes, one of my favorite things. Boo. Um, I, it's really fascinating when you bring up the topic with people because the comfortability of being able to talk about an aspect of life that is in society meant to be a secret, um, is also their ability to notice their own delight around their own childhood,
Mm.
because it's such a base primal experience. But it's also looking at the buttocks, it's looking at what the coccyx is doing. Yeah, we need to look at all of the function around the place and space, but also our ability to be able to let life through. So it's for all of its nuances, not just our preferred ones.
Thanks, Sean.
Mm.
So again, every single one of us at different times have probably experienced a whole landscape of different styles of poo. But Christy, we're going to start with constipation because constipation is something that is widely prevalent in, our clients, our friends, potentially sometimes in us, our family members. So we're going to start with constipation to start with, and some of the areas that you would notice when you're working with clients around constipation, some of the attitudes and patterns.
Yeah, so I am thinking specifically of an experience where someone that came into me and she had been in a fight with one of her friends and was very upset. Part of the reason why she called me is because she couldn't have a bowel movement. And she came in and she's telling me the story and she said, I feel dismissed by my friend and I'm so angry. And we talked about how old she felt and she said, I feel like I'm 5 years old again. And she's 72. And so the beautiful part about that conversation, because it was about feeling safe to express. And in the base in our body is all about safety. And I would also say feeling supported. And as adult, it's feeling supported by us, by the self, and also others. And what we were able to move through is the expression of the anger. And what happened is the tendency was her belly, the lower bowel would get so tight that it became really painful. And when the expression of the anger happened, it relaxed and she was able to move that through the next day. And how powerful it is to bring awareness to the pattern of when I get activated, where do I notice it? And for her, it was in her lower belly. And then everything locked up because she didn't feel safe to express. And so I think the beauty of that is when it happens again, she is able to resource herself in a safe way to be able to talk about it, to be able to be witnessed in it. Because I also think that's core is to be able to express it to another human being and without someone fixing it or that you're broken, that it's an expression and in the expression of safety, the body can relax and let whatever that is move through. And today we're talking about bowel and it was able to move through. And so it's become a pattern that she's creating to resource in a trigger, which is so important to know where it sits and what is the trigger. So it was really helpful and it doesn't stop her up anymore because she knows what she can do when it comes.
Nice. Thanks, Christy.
And
Yeah.
it's also the conclusion point, right? It's where we digest, it's where we have ingested, and it's the conclusion point. Yeah. The point of toxins that we no longer require. It's the point of evacuation, finishing, letting go. It's the conclusion point. Yeah. The death that thereof. Um, so it's noticing how we finish things. Yeah.
Mm.
And even the pattern of invitation, just with the language there, to notice if you are currently experiencing constipation, is there something that you have a fear of expressing, or feeling out of control with? Because that desire to control can also occur within constipation as well. And not necessary for everyone, but we can sometimes see some themes of if there's areas of anger that you may be also holding on to, that frustration, that can also stop or inhibit that flow coming through, because you're actually holding on. And the language that we use can sometimes obviously symbolically also relate to how things move through.
And often there's a hydration point, yeah? And if
Mm.
there's a hydration point, then we know that there's an emotional element. When we bring the emotional element into it, we bring a hydration point to it. And that in turn also changes the texture of the excrement.
Certainly does. Okay, so I guess that moves on into diarrhea, which is a completely different experience. So, Sean, I'll start with you on this one. Diarrhea.
Oh, how many holidays have I had disturbed by diarrhea? Um, Diarrhea is the mm, response of excessively letting go. So often we will find that the biome or the bugs that exist in our own inner atmosphere have have got some guests on board that are visiting, and we must get them out. They don't belong inside of me because they're not of my origin. And then there are other influences when we are sick. Once again, we have more bugs on board, and the body's trying to expel those bugs. So it's really looking at how we manage that. How do we rebind ourselves when the body is having its compulsion to excessively release? Yeah. But we also need to know that there's a natural um, necessity of that as well. So there's a cycle that's happening there, and we need to care for that cycle in order to return to our natural cycle.
Hmm, I like
Mm.
that, Sean. And of course, when you're looking at diarrhea as well, as you mentioned, the illness side of it, and the
Mm.
fact that the body is automatically doing that expulsion, to also consider for people that suffer from diarrhea,
Mm.
if it is food based, because sometimes it can literally just be food based. It can be an intolerance to
Yeah.
dairy. It could be something physically that you need to look at. But I guess I'd like to explore a little bit further about starting to notice the emotional pattern when you go, well, I
Mm.
actually haven't eaten anything that's creating this physical response in my body. I haven't had poisons like that. I haven't been drinking the night before. I haven't created a disturbance, but there are emotionally some events that create the diarrhea coming forward where the
Mm.
body is actually going, um, I don't, I'm not comfortable sitting with this, because that can often still come back down to safety as well. And so, by slowing down the thought process with adding that question, what is the circumstances that I notice this pattern of diarrhea coming? Because it can be in high levels of anxiety, and your body's communicating at that point, I'm not feeling safe. Christy,
And it's the also looking at the nervous system, because it in that moment of that expulsion or the panic or the distress that's there, where there is that get this feeling out of me, and the need to let go in such a unique way, it's also going to cross over into the bladder as well.
yeah,
That's what I was just going to say, because it will go in. It'll happen both ways of needing to go pee when that anxiety goes up, and it's a constant need to your bladder needs to release, release, release. And I'm thinking of different people that I know that do have this issue, different clients that I've seen. And I would say the overall pattern of that is someone where their life experience has been not a place for them to express, period. Whether that be express emotions, anger, sadness, there wasn't a place. And so it's like there isn't a container to hold that. And because it terrifies them, it moves right through them. And the body is so intelligent, it's trying to navigate and regulate the nervous system. And partly how that is regulated is by having diarrhea or needing to urinate.
yeah,
And then it feels better and you can take a breath. And there again, we're looking at the base, which comes right back to loyalty, safety, belonging. So if there's been a wound, which every human being has those, if there's been a wound in childhood, usually it will go back to that of feeling safe in your expression. And sometimes that's even of an expression of a need and not and being afraid to express that need because getting in trouble and then that fear of getting in trouble because you have a need. And sometimes the need is to go to the bathroom. That's a real thing. And then if that, especially in childhood, if that gets it's part of someone's life experience and never has been addressed or even considered that that's a part of their trauma pattern and their nervous system pattern, it's going to be normal and it isn't necessary doesn't necessarily have to stay that way. And that's why we're having this conversation is because it does matter to be curious about, well, I wonder why I need to pee every hour when I'm not drinking water or when I get stressed and I have diarrhea and it's the people that I know that have that it's like you have to go right now. It's not a waiting period, especially if the anxiety gets really high. And so hopefully as we continue to talk about this, if that fits you or anyone you know, to ask the question, what activates that more so versus not?
yeah. I think it's such an important part. Like even in some of the trainings that we've all done, and I'm noticing there's comments from Annette as well that she's noticed some major changes within her bowel movements since doing training as well. Um, Sean can address that in a little bit. But what I've noticed as well with some clients, they may need to go to the bathroom every 45 minutes when you're doing the emotional work of psychosomatics, because you're not just it's not just receiving psychosomatics, you're actually participating and actively giving. So it can create like a heightened emotional field. So every 45 minutes, having to go to the bathroom and seeing has the education factor and really starting to understand the educational component, meaning it can change. This isn't how it's going to be. It's simply that this is how your nervous system has responded in not knowing how else to deal with the emotions, and creating that acceptance space. And by the end of a training, that person that's gone literally every 45 minutes may be going twice a day. So it's not something that has to take years and years and years. It can be something that the body comprehends quickly when you actually start to learn how to hold that part that may not have received nurturing in the way that that body needed. Um, yeah.
Yeah, the atmosphere around learning toilet skills um, does create an imprint.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met with people, holiday with people, stay at houses with people, people on workshops and courses, and toilet habits are fascinating, right? We have to whisper because society doesn't like it. Um, and how dare we notice? Um, but it's also understanding the atmosphere that's there when you are having your moment of letting go.
Mm.
Yes, is it something that is pleasurable? Is it something that has been pleasurable? Is it something that can naturally take place without the intervention of our nervous system or our habits or our brain conversation? It's really enabling the body to do what it wishes to do and needs to do. But it's also looking at what is the pressure that precedes it, and therefore that in itself is also the indicator. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes I might be, at circus and I'm a bit nervous about doing a new trick and I need to go and have a little pee before I get back up there. That's obvious that it's the nervous system that's really heightened in that moment. And there's no right or wrongs around it. It's just noticing.
Mm.
Um, so your body can naturally perform its tasks. Um, and when we find it difficult to contain a moment in ourselves, yeah, there's this rush to get it out. There's this rush to let it go. There's this rush, oh, I don't like this in me. Oh. Um, and at the same time, um, the container that you talked about, Linda, is also my willingness to connect with what is in me.
Mm.
So
Yeah, whilst you were both,
when you've got a client, say, because I love the way you just said, it's a rush to get it out.
yeah,
So what's the invitation you would give to your client on that?
um, depending on their rush, um, would be to take a moment to notice the stress behind.
Mm.
It's funny that we have to say behind. Um, but it, but it's noticing the underlying distress, right? Because that's what we're wanting to remove out of us, or to expel. And when actually it's learning to connect. Whilst you were talking before, it was kind of like um, there's this statement that Australians say when things don't touch the sides.
Yeah.
I haven't
There's
heard
this
that one.
rush to expel. Didn't even touch the sides. So I'm not even connecting with whatever it was that I'm rushing to let go of.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
So,
taking a pause, connecting in with it, saying, do I actually need to go?
well, that presence of need um, would change relative to the age in which it's been activated. So for people that I've seen that have had very early childhood distress and traumas, under the age of 5, those components take a lot more awareness to be
Mhm.
able to nurture those, hold those, stay with those, because they're the people that haven't experienced the appropriate nurturing that they needed. So there's a blind disconnect that happens there rather than a conscious awareness of how else they need to be for themselves. Yeah, the body is already showing you the requirement of nurture or the requirement of connection or the requirement of understanding that it searches for, that it's looking for.
Love the way you say the body is showing you. It's so true, right?
Mm,
Mm.
so true.
Yes.
Yes.
And also the nighttime. One of the reasons I mentioned as well, just about checking in to go, do I actually need to go to the bathroom? Because a lot of people habitually get up, they wake up at a certain time of night, and then they get up and they go to the bathroom, and they could go to the bathroom, 2 or 3 times, sometimes even more during the night. And you're processing unconscious thoughts during the night. things that haven't been processed during the day. So that desire to go to the bathroom isn't always a real need to go to the bathroom. It can be a feeling of I've woken up and I need to go. So sometimes just sitting with, do I need to go? Taking a breath and connecting. Am I just too hot to actually do some just being with the body? Can actually break that pattern of having to need to get up just because it's 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock by doing the check-in without going to the bathroom. And if 5 minutes later you still need to go, go. But it's an interesting shift. Christy, back to you. What are you noticing with that side of things to you in like in the evening? Not for you personally, but just with people that you're working with.
Well, what I found is when awareness has been brought to the pattern like that, because I think in general, most people that I see aren't aware that that is a thing
Mm,
that's related directly to the nervous system. And when we can bring compassion and awareness to whatever that fear might be that's creating that need to go pee and have a conversation around it, it does start to settle it in a different way. And I think it's really powerful because if that is one of the urges, we're talking about safety again. And how could we create more safety? And the question can only be answered by us. I don't know. And that's the conversation. Well, let's have a conversation about what that could be.
mm,
And I don't think it's helpful at all to blame it because it just keeps us in its own cycle. This isn't about blame. This is understanding where it came from and then how we can resource ourselves today in that piece.
mm,
Because if we go into blame, we create a whole other loop that happens that can last for 30 more years.
Which doesn't create a
And
solution.
it's not helpful. So, understanding where it came from, what can we do to create safety within self, then that's where healing can really begin as we notice the different levels in the nervous system, what it feels like. Oh, I need to pee. Is there something going on? What's going on in my head that I might not be aware of that my body's going, I'm scared or I'm nervous. I don't want to do this. Those are the questions that I would begin to work with people and to pay attention to at 3 a.m.
Where is threat coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Yasmin and Jackie have made two different statements there where Yasmin was waking every hour to pee. So that's certainly showing us a very strong threatening environment, right? One one where security is definitely something that is required in that moment, is required in that space. Um, and Jackie Jones is talking about childhood bedwetting, very similar thing. And they can be single events or they can be habits that run for quite a while through a
Mhm.
particular age pattern
Mhm.
inside of an individual. And and how people respond to us as the bedwetter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Huge.
Um, massive,
Yeah.
massive imprints, yeah. Um, and and how the environment um, encourages us down from that pinnacle of panic, right? In order to be able to restore to natural experiences. Um,
yeah.
it's big childhood stuff, right?
Mhm.
And just being able to um, honor somebody's situation. Um,
Mm. And coming back to, I guess, what we were talking about earlier with being able to be witness and like literally that shame and humiliation that can come from some children when they do bedwet or they have an accident and they're treated like they've done something terribly wrong. That those patterns. So to actually be able to articulate and to learn to be that best friend to themselves and we often talk about reparenting, but it's also like being your own best friend. What would the person who loves you the most say to you in that moment that you can learn to say to yourself?
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's really bizarre that when that absence of safety is there, it's like there's a pamphlet missing. It's like there's information missing. So we need to learn how to recreate what safety is
Mm.
because it wasn't naturally infused into us.
Yeah.
So it's something that needs to be playful. It needs to be fun. And therefore, that's where it creates that isolation of security.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that moves us on to a very different style. We are now looking at sticky poo. Now, a lot of people have sticky poo, and it can be directly related to food. It is definitely related to food and food choices. And you'll find that people will tend to crave sweeter foods, and the poo becomes stickier and stickier. So we already have an understanding of the sweetness that they're looking for when that sticky poo is being created. And so diet becomes really important. But the other thing to take a look at is if you're someone who suffers from sticky poo, then it's a real invitation to take a look at the only way of getting that out is to like push on through, right? So that can create a lot of problems within the body, and particularly like the lower stomach as well. So people will get pains because they're pushing so hard. And when you take a look at where in life, just as an invitation, where in life are you constantly pushing through without taking in some of the joy and also, literally bringing things together? What are your responsibilities like? Because sometimes that there is that just, push through to get things done. So I often hear from clients that have that, and particularly showing up in the pain in the lower belly, which ends
Mm.
up being that. So changes of diet, but also noticing, where is that sweetness not coming from? Christy, Sean, would you like to add to?
Mm.
Oh, I'm just sitting here giggling because I want to say the word sticky one more time. But this is where we also need to look at the function of the space, right? The mechanics.
Mhm.
So we need to consider what the abdominal region's doing, and we need to consider what the buttocks is doing. We need to have a look at the vitality of those two places and spaces. When I say vitality, looking at the natural muscle responses that occur in those places and spaces. Um, does the person have a relationship to either of those, the abdominal or the base? Because more often than not, they may not have. Um, and
Yeah.
and when we also look at the anus itself and the pressurizing, that's when we getting towards hemorrhoids, right? Which is also something that we will extend into. Um, it's very funny. I just keep giggling at my language today. It's everything's running its path, right? Um, but the sticky poo is also part of the stuck in a situation,
Mm.
Yeah.
something to consider. Um, and therefore we need to be able to change our role, change our connection, our experience.
Mm, yeah. Feeling
And I,
overly responsible. Yep.
Yep.
yeah,
Christy.
well, I see this a lot. So what I notice is what people don't notice in
Yeah.
that when we're looking at a pelvis, the tendency, if there's been a lot of anxiety and fear, there's two, if we look at a spectrum, there's usually two pieces. Someone who clenches their butt really tight, and then the hips literally would go in your gluteal muscles, and that being a normal. And the other one would be muscle tissue in the buttocks that is flaccid. So there is no holding. Both are the same, just different ways of how they show up. And what I tell many people and clients, and I notice myself regularly, is to notice the base, notice the rectum and the perineum area and unclench it. And what I hear most often is, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean I'm clenching? And that's the first awareness, right? Is to notice what you haven't noticed, which is the clenching and the contraction. That because when a child has fear or trauma, that's exactly where it goes. If you think of a puppy that you yell at a dog or a puppy, their little tail tucks right in underneath their body, protecting their bum. Adults are exactly the same in that the fear response for a child, especially if there's violence and or love withdrawn, sometimes neglect, that little tush just tucks. And then that creates all kinds of issues as an adult of having regular bowel movements, having good sexual relations that isn't painful. There's so many aspects right there within that pelvic bowl, if it's tucked and contracted, that make it very difficult to not only expel our food, but also express what is happening. Because the tendency is to hold it and bringing
Engagement is the
awareness,
word. Mm,
engagement, bringing
mm.
aware of what is your body doing is the first thing I would ask you. And we can do that every single day, like sitting in your car. You can do it when you lie down in bed to bring awareness to that space in the body at least once a day. And as you do it, literally to tell your body, I am safe in this moment. To
Yeah.
begin to repattern the nervous system and the flesh, they go together. I am safe in this moment. It's safe for me to unclench. Even if it's an intentional piece first, which sometimes it is, and then eventually it can get into a space of literally unclenching. But it takes practice when it's been there for 50 years.
Practice and noticing that younger part that's still having a voice, which we're seeing through the body. The unclenching is as well. With that invitation, I'd also get you to take a look at your foot point because quite often people stand like this, and the base representing the room that we take up. When we put our feet close together, you're not taking up your conscious birthright space. And that automatically creates that contraction. So to put the feet with one of your feet in the middle, so you've got a foot apart width, and the heel is aligned literally to the toes. So it's like this, because that will also take some pressure off that base as well.
Yeah, and unlock your knees.
True.
Soften
Mm-hmm.
your knees, you'll have a lot more butt tissue.
Yeah. And even something as simple as that can make such a big difference in terms of people actually going like, as Christy said, and I love that, like sometimes people just haven't noticed that. And so with the education and a simple shift, they can actually feel ready that sense of either safety coming into the body, or it could be, I'm actually now feeling consciously unsafe.
Mm.
And when you
Mm-hmm.
consciously connect to feeling unsafe, you now have something to work with.
It was fascinating at one point when I realized that letting life through is part of our living essential necessity or behavior.
Mm,
Yeah.
Yes. Um, just because my brain has an aversion around something, um, it still needs to pass through me. Um,
Mm.
there's no removing something from a process. It requires our full connection. It requires all that we are in order for that to disperse, because that's the only way I can learn is to let something through.
yes. So on that, Christy, the statement, I don't get angry.
Ah, yes. So this is one thing to notice if that's something that, because there are many people who say that I'm not an angry person. That's not who I am. It's always over here, my camera. It's always over here away from me. And I think the challenge with that is because usually they were in a home of people that were angry. And so they put away that because it's dangerous. That's very real. And sometimes with the body, when we don't are not unable to allow anger to move through us or to be spoken, it continues to compound and implode. And sometimes that can be through diarrhea. That can be through an emotional explosion. And then what we'll hear is, oh my God, I don't know who that was.
Or migraine.
Or a migraine. And I would also say it pulls into hemorrhoids
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Oh.
contraction and combustion. And how important it is to be curious again about when I get angry, what does that look like or sound like or move like? To be curious and to step into that a little bit more. Because the more that we can get to know this body that we're in and all the different seasons and ways that we express, like Sean was saying too, it moves through us and we create the relationship. And it's one of those things that creates health
Mm.
because
Power
if we,
comes in many ways.
it does. And being aware of our patterns is is the beginning of creating better patterns and healthier ways to respond internally
Mm.
to what is happening.
Yeah, the healthy pattern to behaviors and the enjoyment of those behaviors. Just because I'm angry, it's not a moral issue. I'm not a bad person. I'm not here to blindly destroy something. I'm having a passionate response around the circumstances or situations that are currently surrounding me, and it's something that protects me, right?
Yeah.
And when I know how to enjoy the presence of that intensity within my body, then my body also receives all of the awakening tones that come with that. So it's learning how to embrace how you feel. We're not here to destroy situations by the way we feel. We feel this way because we wish to protect ourselves or we're passionate about how something needs to be. And it's our ability to make friends with that part of me.
Mm.
Or else it stays separate and then I'm disempowered. And then it's somebody else's fault. Yet I haven't
Mm.
engaged with myself appropriately in order to experience fully what's on offer.
I love the reframe of passion
Yeah.
and intensity. There's softer
Yeah.
words.
Well, my dad constantly had hemorrhoids. It was just like, and he was I called him the plant pot. He was kind of just this man in the corner,
Mm.
you know? And yet we can see what happens when we turn in on ourselves. Yeah, our own frustrations create that. It creates a force or a pulse around the anus, which in turn becomes a symptom. And the symptom is really only telling us more about ourselves, of course,
Mm.
and our current relationship to that component of ourselves.
And just adding something sideways to that, as you were speaking, Sean, the adaptation to behaviors that have kept people safe
Mm,
can become a happy space. It's a safe space with the adaptive patterns. So it becomes familiar. People like it. And that can also hold people into patterns that really are no longer serving them and where they haven't put the appropriate boundaries in place. But it creates a persona, and that persona might be liked by other people. So, in some respects, it's not about taking away an adaptive pattern. It's about educating and having that awareness of how that adaptive pattern has served well, while still holding the part that could be terrified about the consequence of being different. So all of that is still linked to the digestive system. And we see that in pretty much so many different styles of face shapes and bodies, not just in one pattern, it's in a series of patterns from the people pleaser to the person who's the protector, all the way through the archetypes. We see that pattern will show up in different ways. And I think it's a really important pattern because, I refer to that as the happy bubble space. It's like you create this space where you're really not ever challenged within the happy bubble space because it's like there's a sign on the door. And if it was anger that the emotion is that's concern, it's like people at the front gate get only happy people are allowed through, and then you go through the next screening. So by the time that you have the people that surround you, you're not being activated. It doesn't mean that you've resolved that problem. It means that you're living within that adaptive style. And outside of that bubble can be actually a lot of containment that basically stops that enjoyment of life that Sean was just referring to.
Mm.
So it's like the ability to know that you've got the resource internally because of the kindness, compassion that you have towards yourself, that this is not a problem. And it does take work. It does take work.
Yeah.
Awareness, yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, um, be playful with it.
I think it's a really central keep, being playful with it. I
It's
learned that from
just
Sean, being playful with it.
gotta be playful with it. Because each time there's a necessity in life for us to say something about an indifference that's going on, um, we need to ensure our own path and at the same time um, playfully explore the necessity of the connection that's required because it's required because it's there.
Hmm.
So it's got to happen.
One of the things we were discussing before the call was the phrase, just, I want you to get rid of this for me, or I want to get rid of this. And I love it when I hear that. I've certainly said that in the past. I just want to get rid of this. And it becomes such an exploration of whatever this is, number one. How is this being held? And I I see that as an invitation to how do I integrate whatever this piece is that I do not want, like, or think I have, which is I'm not an angry person. Could we bring in all of the aspects of who we are and have that be more of this complexity, which brings depth instead of different masks or faces? And it's part of who we are, all of these aspects. And I think that's what creates an interesting human being, too.
And often we're in denial about certain parts of ourselves because of how others have reacted or interacted with those parts.
Yeah, especially the anger part.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, the spectrum of the passive and aggressor is something that most certainly has unique effects around the anus. So it's
Mm.
Mm.
A good exploration on anger and how it's placed within your body is how would another person know when you're angry? So if you can consider that from the other person's perspective, it will give you some insights into how you might actually start to play with expressing yourself in a different way and maybe finding a voice in a different way. Even if it is confronting, terrifying to actually find your voice and actually speaking up with what is happening. Um, it's really good to challenge yourself with maybe breaking those patterns.
yeah, the invitation to power. And
Mm.
we say power, but it's active power, it's interactive power, it's um it's not the only way to experience power, yet it's a strength of force that moves through us, and that's why it's called power.
Mm.
Well, and I think having choice creates that sense of power and having an internal choice about what the reaction is. Can I offer something different to myself? Creates an expansion in our nervous system, which also creates this power. Because I love that word, in that even the question of where do I lose my power is so key, because that tells us a lot about ourselves. And just like Linda said, pay attention with that. Describing, have you said have someone describe you when you get angry?
Yeah, how would they know? How would
How
they
would they
know when
know?
you're
Yeah.
angry? Yeah.
Mm.
And that's a good indication of how you lose power, if it's explosive or passive, which can be either one. Sometimes it can be a whole different thing. The more we can get to know those parts of us, that does bring in power, empowerment, and that comes down to choice and awareness.
I'm just laughing at Gail's comment. I didn't realize talking about poo could be so interesting. And thank you, Lou. Yes, empowerment versus force. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're angry, um, part of us wants it our way, but actually the situation um, simply needs to find a new equilibrium.
Yeah.
So rather than feeling as if forcing your point is going to give you what you want, it's actually recognizing that the way things are undesirable, and therefore we're asking for a new status quo by the engagement together
Mm.
with whatever the party is.
And a lot of these patterns are unconscious. And this is why having somebody work with you to reframe and to extract and to guide you in conversations, it doesn't have to be a psychosomatic therapist, it could be a counselor, it could be a psychologist, but having someone that actually extracts and is able to literally go and what's beneath that for you? What actually happens at the thought of expressing what you want to say? Because they're questions that you wouldn't consciously ask yourself. You sometimes need to be guided in that process. But once you're in that process and once you've been guided down and you connect with, oh my gosh, the reason why I hold back what I really want to say is because of ABC. And when that happens, this is where I go within myself. So it actually actively gives you a pathway towards doing something different. And it's changing those patterns that change the membranes, it changes the muscle tension, it changes the neural pathways, and changes, brings you back into your more authentic presence.
Yes, the passion of engagement.
Yes. And of course, we're going to continue these conversations next week in part three, not next week, next
Oh,
month in
perfect.
part
Mm.
three. But before we close, is there anything that needs to be said, Christy, to wrap the session up from you?
Yes, it's about
Ah,
poo. We must complete.
We must complete.
oh, let me choose my words carefully. In this completion process, please be curious about your patterns. Be more aware of the tension that you hold in your hips and in the rectum, to relax it more often, to just being more awareness to the body. It is there as your friend, not your enemy. And the more that we can be curious about our own patterns, the easier it is to have ease literally come into the bowel movements and in our life.
Thank
Let
you,
life
Christy.
happen, let life through.
Yeah.
And
Funny
have
conversation
fun
and
with
fun.
it.
Yeah. Mm. Great conversation.